Hello, everyone. Welcome to our genealogy jumpstart session for today. For those who don't know me, I'm Katie Stilp. I'm the local history librarian here at the library. Today, we're going to talk all about planning a research trip. So, I feel like summer is a great road trip time or a time to explore somewhere new. So, hopefully, you can do that this summer or fall and tie in some genealogy research while you're traveling. So you might be wondering, well, why do I need to go on a research trip? Everything's online. Well, not everything is online, not everything is digitized. You will have to search offline for materials. So, as you can see in this cool little graphic from the California Genealogical Society, the internet is just the tip of the iceberg. So, if you are limiting yourself to just searching on the internet, you're missing a ton of stuff. So, there's going to be lots of things offline in libraries, in archives, in courthouses that you want to go explore to find all the records for your ancestors and solve all the pieces of the puzzle of your ancestors' lives. Of course, you might also want to go see your ancestral homeland or where your ancestors may have lived for a period of their lives. Of course, it's costly to go travel, but it's also costly to hire a researcher in certain areas. So, say perhaps your family was originally from Germany and maybe you can't get over there. You could hire a researcher, but there's certain areas where maybe there's not going to be researchers available, or it's going to be more costly for you to hire somebody and you don't know how thorough they're going to do the research. So, if you are able to go travel to where you can go do research, I definitely encourage it. It's also really important to find original sources when you're doing genealogy research. So you don't want to just rely on derivative sources. So this kind of calls back to, I believe, our first presentation all the way last February, I believe it was. So original sources are ones that exist as they were originally recorded. So, for example, a birth record that is recorded in a county register of deeds office is an original source. A derivative source then is going to be something that's produced by reproducing some or all of the content contained in that original source. So, for example, you could have an index of births available on Ancestry.com that is just an index just saying, here's some names and some dates, maybe a volume number or a page number, but it's not the actual original birth record. So, you don't want to just stop at that index. You want to get the original record because there's going to be details on that original record that aren't in that index. Even if they've reproduced all of that information in a database or something, you still want to get that original record and verify that all of it's correct because, there's people transcribing stuff or translating stuff or taking pieces out of it that maybe they made an error. I mean, mistakes happen. So you definitely want to always be sure to get that original source whenever possible because those are going to be the best sources for you in your genealogy research. You also want to focus on obtaining more primary sources to prove or disprove your research. So, again, a reminder of what primary and secondary sources are. Primary sources are created by someone with firsthand knowledge of the reported fact or facts. They either participated in or were a witness of an event or circumstances. So, for example, if you have that birth date that's recorded in that birth certificate that was recorded by the doctor or the parent who was present at the birth, that's a primary source for that fact. But if you have secondary information, that's going to be something that's provided by somebody with secondhand knowledge. So, for example, if you look at a death certificate for somebody and you have a birth date on that death certificate, well, that death certificate is not filled out by somebody who has firsthand knowledge of that birth of that person, usually. So perhaps it's the child of the person who died and they're writing their mom's birth date on there. Well, they obviously weren't there at their mom's birth, so they didn't have that firsthand knowledge, but it's secondhand information, which is why it's a secondary source. You might be wondering, of course, well, where do I go to do all the genealogy research that I need to do? If you ever run into roadblocks of, gosh, I feel like I've looked at all the records for my ancestor. What else could there be? What else is available? I always remember the acronym SLAM. Societies, libraries, archives, museums. So you want to slam your research in that geographic area where you're researching. So that city or that town that your ancestors lived in, you want to go look at all the societies, libraries, archives, and museums. And of course, there's lots of different varieties. So for societies, there's genealogical societies, there's historical societies, there could be a city society or a county historical society or a state or a territory or regional. So there's all different kinds of different societies. Just like libraries, there's national libraries, there's state libraries, we've got public libraries, which we're in today, we've got private libraries, we've got university libraries, there's libraries within museums, there's libraries within historical society or genealogical society. So there's all these different options for you depending on what's available in that location. Archives as well. There's federal archives, there's state archives, county, city, church, all kinds of different types of archives as well. And then museums, of course, there's different museums tailored to different subjects, but they could have museums anywhere in that geographic location where your ancestors lived that might have materials or artifacts that could help you in your genealogy research. You might, of course, also want to go to the cemeteries where your ancestors are buried, courthouses to find any of those records that were transferred there, churches where your ancestor attended, or any other religious institutions. Maybe you want to go visit an extended family member. Maybe they have resources that you want to copy, or photos, or you just want to talk to them about what they know about your family. Well, go plan a visit to go see them. Or again, maybe you want to go see your ancestral homeland or where your ancestor lived. So these are all great options for you to consider when you're planning a research trip of where to go. I've also got a couple genealogy research destinations that I wanted to highlight. So, of course, being in Wisconsin, we've got the Great Wisconsin Historical Society Library in Madison, but it is not just Wisconsin resources. So, even if you have ancestors from California or Florida or any state in the United States, even international resources, they've got at the Wisconsin Historical Society Library. So, I definitely encourage a visit if you're anywhere near Madison or want to plan a trip to Madison. It's a great city to go explore, and they've got a beautiful library. They've got a really great newspaper microfilm collection as well. So, for example, not all the digitized newspapers are available online. So I found like obituaries from a great uncle who died in New Jersey, for example. They've got microfilm from all over the United States. The Newberry Library down in Chicago also has some great genealogy resources for this area. You might be familiar with the Allen County Public Library Genealogy Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Again, just like the Wisconsin Historical Society, just like Newberry Library, they've got resources for all over the United States, not just that state or that area. They've got tons of physical items. They've got expert genealogy librarians there that you can go pick their brains and talk to them. They've got great genealogy programs there as well that they do online as well as in person in the library. So a lot of great resources there. Of course, probably the number one for most genealogists is going to be the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City, Utah. Great place to go research. You definitely want to have a plan before you go, though, because it can be overwhelming. I went for the first time 2 years or so ago, and even as a librarian, I was overwhelmed by going there and having to do all the research. So, a really great resource that they have there in Salt Lake City, where they've got lots of things that are not available on the Family Search website. So, you need to go there to physically get access to some things. If your ancestors immigrated through Ellis Island, they've got a great American Family Immigration Center at Ellis Island in New York City. Washington, D.C., of course, is home to the National Archives. They've also got regional locations as well throughout the United States that have some records. We talked back in May all about military records that are at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis. So that might be another great genealogy research destination for you if you've got a lot of military ancestors that you want to research their service. And of course, there's state vital records office, there's state archives, state libraries. Every state in the United States is going to have one. So in order to find those, you can use Google or any other search engine that you might want to use. So for example, I could type in Wisconsin State Vital Records. And then the first result here is going to be the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, their Vital Records Office. So I can go through their website, read all about, how to get there, any other requirements that might have to, doing genealogy. So usually I'm looking for a genealogy spot, and then it'll talk to me through kind of their policies, if you need to have an appointment, things like that, where to go, all that kind of great stuff. There's also going to be um, state libraries. So, for example, Illinois State Library. I can type that in. I can go to their website and see, oh, it's in Springfield, see what available things that they have that might relate to genealogy. So, again, explore their websites, learn more about them before you decide on a whim, hey, I'm going to go drive down to Springfield and explore and see what I can find on my ancestors. I would develop a plan, which is kind of what we're going to talk all about today, how to kind of pre-plan for that trip. There's also a website that I've got included in your handout. It's a little out of date website. It's was last updated in 2017 if you look at that link down here, but it still has a lot of really great information. So for example, I can click on any of these states and it will pop up. Okay, here's Maine, here's the state archives, here's the State Library of Maine. They've got some family search centers in Maine that you can also look at. So any of these would have, locations for you that you might want to consider going to research your ancestors if they happen to have lived in that area or they have resources in that area. So that's a good starting point if you're also having difficulty kind of finding things on Google or your search engine. Another great site that I like to help locate potential research locations is going to be Cindy's List. So we've talked about this a few times throughout our different sessions, but this is kind of this comprehensive website of all these different links to potential categories or things, different resources that are available. There's both free and paid resources on Cindy's List. The site here is completely free, but she does link to paid resources as well. So what you want to do is you can click on categories. The bummer about it being a free site is they do have a lot of pop-up ads sometimes that you have to kind of click around or navigate around. But you can see just at a glance all the different broad categories that they have. So they've got categories for every country, categories for every state in the United States, all kinds of great things. Ships and pastoralists, all societies, all these kinds of great things. So you can scroll down here to the United States and then click on any, specific state that you're looking for. So say you're researching in Michigan, you can click on that, and then all of these links would be related to that specific state and then these specific categories. Well, if you're looking for spots that you might want to research on site in Michigan, she's always got a Libraries, Archives, and Museums tab. So remember, SLAM, Societies, Libraries, Archives, Museums, those are places we want to research in. So now I can see potential places where I maybe want to go research. Maybe I want to go to the Archives of Michigan or the Bentley Historical Library. So there's all kinds of really great resources in Cindy's List, and then she links you right directly to them. So now if I want to go look and see what resources are here, I'm brought right to their website and I can search around, poke around, see what's available. Sometimes the links are a little maybe not quite right because it's kind of like page not found up here. So you can always kind of go back and try clicking on something else and seeing if you're able to get it. Or, once you have that name of that location, maybe just using that in a Google search. So for example, now this site works. So I can search here to see what they've got in that historical library. And she's constantly updating this site with new links or replacing broken links with updated links. So if you come across something that's broken, definitely let her know and then she'll investigate to get it updated. And she's also adding more stuff constantly as she learns about it. So a great kind of jumping off point for finding more locations. So now we're going to get to all the fun planning stuff because you want to make sure you have a plan in place before you go do your research. So depending on when you go and where you're going to go, you want to give yourself plenty of time to plan ahead. So is it somewhere that you just have to drive an hour or so? Maybe you just need a few weeks or a few days to plan. Maybe it's somewhere that's out of state or out of the country. Do I need a few months or maybe even a year in advance to plan? I always kind of go with the rule of thumb that the further away I'm going to go, or the more research I plan to do in that location, the more time I want to give myself to plan and make sure I'm going to use my time when I'm at that site as effectively as I can. Because I don't want to just show up and wing it. Some people like to do that, and in genealogy research, you're going to be very overwhelmed and very confused about where to go and what things to do. So I always recommend planning as much as you can in advance. What I personally do, because I'm a Virgo, I'm very organized. I have a little organizational system to keep all my planning stuff in place. So I, recommend using like something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word or Excel, or if you're a pencil and notebook kind of person, keeping track of all your plans there as you're going, as you're finding a location, put that in your document, put that in your itinerary, write down the pertinent information that you're going to need to know before you go there. So, of course, as you start planning, you first want to consider what places you might want to eventually go to. I always encourage people to even do this as you're starting to work on your research, even before you're even thinking where you could possibly go. So, I'm making a list of all the births, all the marriages, all the deaths, as I'm researching, and I'm seeing, oh, my ancestors were in Peoria, Illinois for a really long time. So, I'm going to start making lists so that eventually, when I go to Peoria to do research, now I've got all those lists of things that I want to look at while I'm there and all these blanks I want to fill. If I want to get my birth record of my great great grandpa, I want to have that on my list. And then I can just go one by one down my list and have that all ready to go. So I basically have lists for each location as I'm doing research. So a list for Madison when I want to go to the Historical Society Library, a list for Germany when I want to get there and get to my ancestral hometown. So as you're uncovering those new facts about your ancestor, you want to add that to that location list or create a new list if it's a new location that you don't already have a list for. Then eventually I'm going to go research at that location. I've got that list of things I want to research. And of course, before you maybe add something to that research list, check and see if it's available online. As we just talked about in the beginning of our talk, though, not everything's online, but it's also a good idea to periodically check that list and check the genealogy sites, because maybe since the last time you added that thing or updated that list, maybe records have come online. So, when I was first making a list about stuff in Germany, there was not much online. But then, 6 months later, when I was, adding something else to the list, I said, hey, I'm going to go check and see if stuff's online. And all of a sudden, there's some baptism records that are online that now I can take those off my list because I found those resources online. I like to keep these to research list organized in a folder. So I have a whole research trip planning folder, and then I have different subfolders for each location, or so you could do it by city, by state, by country, county, whatever you want to do. Um, and then once you come across something in that area, add it to your location list or save a separate little bookmark or something about that place in your research trip planning folder. So then having all this stuff gathered along the way, it really helps having it all in one place. And then when I'm like, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm going to go to Madison. Well, now I'm pretty much ready to go to Madison because all this time I've been researching, I've got a whole list of stuff that I want to do in Madison, all the things I want to look at. And then I have a lot less planning to do before I go to Madison. Of course, you got to figure out logistics. That's a really big key part of traveling. Of course, if you've traveled before, you always got to figure that out. The who, what, when, where, why, how, where are you going to go? When are you going to go? What date? What time? What places are you going to visit when you're there? What are the hours of those places? Does it fit in your planned itinerary? If you're going on a weekend and those places aren't open on the weekend, well, that's not going to fit in your itinerary. You're going to need to shift your plan and go different dates or not go to that place that's not open, of course. Who are you going to go with? I always love bringing a research assistant, what I call, somebody in my family that I've made come along and help do some research, and I pay them in a fun trip and food for their assistance. So it's always nice to have a buddy to travel with and help you out while you're doing research, or maybe somebody else also has research that they need to do there at the same time that they want to come and go with you, and you guys can do it together. How are you going to go? Are you going to go by plane, car, train, bus? But not only how are you going to get there, but how are you going to get around when you are there? Are you going to take public transit? Are you going to have a rental car? Where are you going to park? Things like that that you gotta have to think through. I mean, some people can do that on a whim and figure that part out, but for me, I like to have it all planned out and make sure everything is good to go so I can just focus on the genealogy. Why are you going to go there? Make sure you have that research list. I want to figure out the birth records. I want to figure out where in the cemetery they're buried and go visit their gravestones. Have that goal list of what you want to do when you're there. Do you need to contact anybody in advance? So maybe that relative that you want to see while you're there, make sure, that they know that you're coming, when you're coming, and they're ready for you. And don't just show up on their doorstep and knock on their door and hope that they're home and want to chat with you for an hour about genealogy or pull out their photos for you. I, of course, like to draft an itinerary for my trip. So I'm making sure I'm hitting all the things when those things are going to be open. I always make sure to build in wiggle room because you need to have fun when you're there as well. And things are always going to take longer than you think. Even if Google Maps says it takes 10 minutes to drive from location A to location B, there's traffic, there's, a closed road, there's going to be parking issues or something's going to happen where it might take a few minutes longer, or, things just always take longer. If you plan, oh, I'm just going to be there for an hour to look up these five things, well, maybe you get caught up in something else and it takes longer than that hour that you planned. So, of course, always give yourself wiggle room. You also have to think about weather. So if you're going to be doing research outdoors in a cemetery, for example, or you need to drive, you want to have that backup plan of, okay, what am I going to do if, for whatever reason, oh, there's a water main break in that location that I planned to go research at today is not open. Now I have a backup plan as well. There's a great link in your handout called How to Create a Genealogy Research Plan that I recommend reading through, and it'll help kind of walk you through a little bit more on how to have a whole research plan in place for those specific genealogy questions you want to answer or those genealogy goals that you want to have, so that you can help make sure that you're achieving those goals when you're on these research trips. I always recommend contacting those places that you want to go, making sure that they actually have the materials that you plan to go see. Make sure, do you actually have the birth records, or are they, copies of the birth records? Uh, what can I access without even going there? What do you have available that's maybe on your website? Are you actually going to be open when I'm going to be there? Do I need an appointment? Make sure that they're actually in their location. Places might need to temporarily move to a different location while some construction goes on or renovation. Do they have different policies on what is allowed, what isn't allowed? Can I take photos with my phone, or I can only bring pencil in and not anything else? Or can I bring my purse in? Things like that. Of course, lots of places have this information on their website, but sometimes, that information might be out of date. Maybe they've recently changed something that it's not correct on there, or maybe they didn't list, 2 or 3 dates that they're going to be closed for something. So you always just want to plan ahead and call them just to make sure. I also like to have a prepared list of questions if I'm going to go talk to any relatives. So, what do I want to learn from those people to help kind of guide that conversation? Of course, leave some wiggle room. Of course, they're going to share stories and talk about different things, but at least kind of make sure you have those main points that you want to talk about while you're there. Of course, if you're going internationally, you want to make sure you have all your travel documents that you're going to need and get those in place so that you're not stuck trying to figure it out while you're traveling. I also love these great kits. We have these oral history interview kits through the library. You can go check them out upstairs at our reference desk. So these are really great if you're interviewing relatives, or even if you just want to interview yourself and talk to yourself and share like memories or record a conversation between people. It's really great to be able to push record on it and then like take notes as you're talking to them, but you can still focus on what they're saying and then know that you can listen to that recording afterwards to get all the other details that you might have missed. Or, replay it. Like, I thankfully was fortunate enough to interview my grandparents before they had passed away, and now I have that recording of them telling their story, telling about their parents and their history and stuff, that now it's really priceless, that I can just on a whim pull up their voices and listen to them. So these are great. These kits have everything you need. They've got this little digital voice recorder. They've got a cord that connects right to your computer, so you can save that digital file right on your computer. And then it's got a little booklet that kind of gives you some sample interview questions, talks to you about how to use the recorder, but it's pretty simple. You pretty much just press record. We've got it in English and Spanish and Hmong as well. And it all comes in this handy little carrying case for you to bring. This one also does not require batteries, which is really great, but you do use the cord to make sure that it's charged all the way before you go try to use it. Of course, a big consideration when you're talking about traveling is budget. Do I have enough money to go? If things are not cheap, gas is not cheap, it's not cheap to stay in a hotel or anything like that. So think about what can I afford to spend? When I go to these locations, am I going to purchase the record? And it's $20 a record, for example. Well, that's going to get really costly really quick. So I want to figure out how much can I afford, how I'm going to pay for this trip, what are all the different expenses and incidentals I'm going to need. If I'm going to stay overnight, I need lodging. I'm going to need to eat. I'm going to need gas to get around. I'm going to need parking that costs money. I've got to make copies that cost money. Oh, I want a souvenir while I'm there. Or, oh, I have to tip this person. Or, oh, I want to go to this cool museum and it costs money to do that. So you got to think about all those things that you might want to do. I always recommend overestimating the costs rather than underestimating. That way, you can always use that remaining money that you didn't spend towards your next genealogy trip. If you're looking for a really great budget planner and a checklist to kind of think of through all those different costs that you might not think about, there's a great link in your handout for a Family Tree magazine article all about budget planning. You do need to provide your email address, but it is completely free to download it. And here's a little snapshot of what it looks like. So it kind of talks to you about the different, transportation fees, different lodging, food, research, entertainment, and then it's got a whole trip packing list, which I think is really helpful too when thinking about what are the things I need when I'm going to go do a research trip. I also recommend like Googling the town or the city and seeing what I might want to do while I'm there, because maybe there's things outside of genealogy or things that I didn't consider that I want to see while I'm there. Most places also have visitor guides online, or you can request that they mail you a hard copy. So, hey, I'm going to go to Virginia. Let me see the Virginia Visitor's Guide and see, oh, there's this cool hiking trail that's going to be near this genealogy place that I want to go to. Now I've got something fun to do, something to relax me. Or, oh, I didn't realize it'd be 20 minutes away from the beach or something like that. You can see all those cool things that you can do. Some places have a state level one, of course, but they also have city ones or county level ones as well. I also use TripAdvisor a lot. They've got great reviews. They also list out things that you can do in a specific area. So for me, I just recently went to Washington, D.C. I'd never been there before. So I used TripAdvisor to search Washington, D.C. They've got things to do, they've got hotels, they've got restaurants, all that's kind of great stuff. So you can kind of at a glance see, well, what is there to do? Okay, go here to the Lincoln Memorial or go to the Capitol, or they've got the African American History Museum, things like that, that you can see, places to stay, places to eat, all this kind of great stuff at a glance. And this is international, so you can type in any international country you want to, any location you plan to go to. So, like if I want to go to Rockdig, Germany, where my ancestors are from, I've got information here. That one's a very small city, so it might not always work for the small cities, but say I pick a bigger city nearby, then I can see all the different cool things I can do there. I'm a person who likes to book their travel accommodations in advance. So booking my hotels, if I would need a rental car, purchasing all my tickets for the museums and things I want to go to. I like to have that done in advance. Of course, if you're somebody who doesn't want to do that, that's up to you. But for me, again, I just want to focus on my genealogy stuff while I'm there and making sure I don't have to worry about, oh, making sure I have a hotel that's open and a place to sleep that night. So, if you want to do that in advance, I definitely recommend it. I also like to plan out a driving route. So if you're going to be driving, of course, use Google Maps or any other online map website. So you can almost accurately account for how long travel takes between different places. Again, always add that buffer time because you never know what traffic's going to be like, or oh, there was an accident as you're driving on I-80. Well, now that there's going to be a little bit of time between going from point A to point B. You can also use a map to see, what restaurants, what attractions are going to be nearby, or where your hotel is compared to that library that you're going to, things like that. So I personally use Google Maps a lot. It's got this really cool satellite overview that you can do. So for example, if I know I'm going to go to the Wisconsin Historical Society, I can type that in. So now it's going to pop it up over here on the map. I can also get to their website and look at kind of directions and stuff like that, see their open hours, stuff like that from here. But now I can see kind of this overview and I can zoom in and see, okay, what else is around here? Oh, I'm going to go get some ice cream at the Daily Scoop for sure when I'm there researching. It's going to be a good little break for me. Or I can see, oh, there's kind of other, restaurants and things or parking lots and see. And again, this little yellow guy, I can pop him down on the map to see, okay, what does that building look like? So I know when I'm walking down there trying to find that building, now I know what it looks like, and I can zoom around and look at the area and kind of get that, um, you know, idea in my head of, okay, where's the entrance here? Well, here it is. All right, it's around that corner, not the corner where I'm going to park over. So again, a nice little tool that you can use to see places before you go there and be a little bit more prepared. I also, again, recommend looking at those websites of those places. So I make a list of all the materials I'm going to view while I'm there. So if I know I'm going to the Wisconsin Historical Society, I know they've got pre-1907 vital records for the state of Wisconsin. I know they've got newspaper microfilm. So I'm going to have a list of all the different things that I want to look at. I know there's going to be books that I want to look at. So I'm going to look at their catalog in advance. I'm going to write down those call numbers. I'm going to write down any page numbers or any volume numbers if there's some sort of online index or a card catalog on their website that I can figure out these are the exact spots in the library I need to go. Some websites will have a map of the library or where things are, or you can always call in advance. So before I went to the Wisconsin Historical Society for the first time, I gave them a call. I said, hey, how's your library laid out? And they said, oh, we can email you a stack guide. So it tells me what's on each floor, and then I can make my list by floor and then by call number. So I'm not going from the second floor to the fourth floor, back to the third floor, back to the second floor, and up and down the stairs or up and down the elevator constantly. Now I'm going, doing all my second floor research, then I'm going up to the third floor, doing all the third floor research, and using my time a little more wisely. Again, places might have a policy where you need to have an appointment, or maybe you need to request that materials be pulled for you in advance, or you could request, or maybe there's certain restricted records that you need to get permission for in advance. Again, you want to make sure that they're going to be open when you plan to go there, and make sure that you're utilizing those materials that are only available in person and not wasting your time with things that you can actually find online. So again, before you add those things to your research list, make sure you're checking online to make sure that they're not available online and you're not wasting that time. If you're going to a cemetery, contact that cemetery office. See if they've got a detailed burial map of that section of the grave sites and the names, so you know exactly where you're going and you're not walking around, an acre of a cemetery trying to find this headstone. So that'll help you maximize your research time and cut down on wasted time when you're on the trip so that you can focus on doing the genealogy stuff that you want to do. I always recommend, of course, doing that genealogy in advance a little bit. You want to make sure you've done enough research in advance before you do your trip because you want to make sure your trip's worthwhile. I don't want to have you just wing it and figure it out. So I have people reach out to me constantly that I'm always surprised at. Hey, I want to find my Norwegian ancestors. We're going to Norway in 2 weeks. I say, okay, well, good luck because you need to do a little bit more digging. You can't just say, I'm going to Norway and not know where in Norway your ancestors are from or what records you want to look at when you're in Norway or what resources there are in Norway. Like maybe 2 weeks in advance, you could get a little bit of a plan together, but giving yourself a little bit more time in advance is going to be a lot better use of your time and more fruitful when you are there. You might be able to find local people, local relatives who live in that area, who you might be able to visit or might be able to meet when you're there. Doing that in advance and making sure that they're going to be available is going to be great for you to make sure that that trip's worthwhile. I always make sure to print my genealogy stuff that I'm going to need to consult pretty often when I'm on my trip. So maybe I'm going to print out the, 7 generations of my family tree so that I don't have to keep pulling it up on my phone or pulling it up on my computer. Or I've got, a little profile snapshot of that, second great grandmother that I'm really looking at researching in depth in this place. Of course, never bring your original documents. You always want to make copies and bring those copies instead of those originals because they might get lost, they might get misplaced, might get damaged. You could also use a cloud-based storage system. So these are websites that you can save materials to, like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox. You can save, a bunch of different things on there and not have to have a printed copy or have to constantly try to pull them up on your computer. You've got kind of that one spot where you can go and then get all those things as long as you have that internet connection. If you're going somewhere that you really just want somebody to go with you and show you all the things, like especially if you're going international, you might want to hire somebody local who really knows the area, really knows that local language. If you're, going to Germany and you don't speak German, you can get by a little bit, but maybe for this really small town, you really want somebody to show you in depth where the different streets are or where these resources are. So I always recommend reaching out to a local historical or genealogy society about any potential guides that might be available that you could hire. Of course, they can accompany you to the local landmarks, local attractions. They may be able to explain some history or help arrange tours and other things that you want to do while you're there. Again, you got to figure that into your budget, though, if that's something that you can afford in your budget. Make sure you've got it all planned out, make sure you've got it saved, and all those details worked out. You, of course, want to set realistic goals for your trip, but you want to be flexible. You want to be having fun as well. You don't want to just, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend all hours that the Family Search Center is open. I'm going to spend every waking hour there. That's not fun. You're going to have a headache and be stressed and be overwhelmed and regret that you took no time outside of that building to do anything else. You got to go in with that mindset. May not get all the things done I had planned, so I want to prioritize what I absolutely need to do or want to do while I'm there. If I know getting that birth date or that birth record for that second great grandmother is the top priority, I want to make sure I'm doing that first to make sure I've got that done before I'm going and looking at, the great great uncle who really maybe doesn't matter as much to me in my research. So I'm making sure I'm putting that at the beginning of the trip, always. A great local tour guide in Yellowstone gave me a tip that I've always considered even when I'm traveling just for fun. He said, if you ever want to come back to a certain place, always leave at least one thing on your list that you didn't get done when you were there. So, hey, I didn't get to go see Old Faithful. Well, now I have an excuse next time I go to Yellowstone that's going to be the cool thing I'm looking forward to doing when I'm there. Of course, remember, always things take time, take longer than you think they take. Something unexpected might happen that throws off your itinerary, like that rainy day that you plan to visit the cemetery. So you've got to move your itinerary around a little bit, or a burst water pipe makes the library close on the day that you plan to be there. So you got to be a little flexible, or just understand life happens. Maybe you're not going to get to go to that place when you're on that trip because life happened and it threw you off track and threw you off your plans. Again, don't jam pack your itinerary with too many things. You want to leave time for rest, leave times for breaks, leave time for the non-genealogy things, especially if you're bringing a research assistant with you. They are not going to want to spend the whole time doing genealogy stuff all the time. If you're visiting with family, of course, you want to be flexible. You know, maybe they unexpectedly say, "Hey, we want you to stay for dinner," or, "Oh, we want to introduce you to Great Aunt Sally. She just lives a few miles away," or, you might not plan for that, and then all of a sudden, now you're spending more than that time that you allotted there. Or maybe you're going to come across new information as you're doing the research on site that's going to kind of take you away from that original research plan. So you got to think, okay, am I going to stick with my research plan and kind of ignore this fun stuff that I just found? Or am I going to go down that rabbit hole and continue digging a little bit more and trying to find more? So again, that's why you always prioritize what you want to do, what's the most important thing for you on that trip, so that you can make sure you get it done before maybe you go off course and go down the rabbit hole. Do we have questions so far? I know I've thrown a lot of stuff at you so far. We've still got some stuff to cover, but
One
sure.
thing is for, birth. Um, and we're talking about the 1900s.
Hmm.
Would they be likely to have more at the county record that's not in the main state vital record?
So sometimes states and counties had different information on their records. So like I know, sometimes the state would cover like a register style where it'd be like multiple births on one page, and then the county would have an actual certificate that each person's a certificate. And they might have some of the same information, but they might have different information. So I always recommend looking at both. Yeah. Any other questions from folks here? Let's see. Someone says WagsWhittier.org, based in Whittier, California, has donated our members' pedigree charts collected over the 30 years to the Whittier Historical Society. The public can freely view them on site only. So yeah, that's a great research place if you have ancestors in that area. All right. So more planning. I always like to pack a little genealogy travel kit if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of research in a specific place. But you want to tailor it to what you plan to do while you're there and what mode of transportation you have or what your budget's allowing. Because if you're flying, you can't feasibly bring everything with you unless you just have a suitcase full of just genealogy stuff, which can be really costly. Maybe instead of printing a bunch of things, I'm going to use that cloud-based storage site like Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox to store that genealogy stuff and only print, the 5 pages maybe I think I really, really am going to refer to a lot and don't want to have to keep pulling up. Of course, you always gotta want to leave room in your suitcase for those souvenirs and all the genealogy research you might plan to bring back with you. Maybe if you're making copies of records, or you find a court case and you make copies of it, you want to have room in your suitcase to bring that home with you. If you can't just scan it in and email it to yourself, for example, or if you're somebody who prefers that hard copy. Some things, of course, this is not a comprehensive list. And again, what you are going to need depends on what research you're conducting, how you plan to conduct it. But some ideas for you, of course, notebook and pencils to take notes, write things down. Maybe a multi-pocket folder to put those papers in and get them organized. Your smartphone or a tablet, plus a charger and a battery pack. So if you're going to take photos with that stuff, if you're allowed at those repositories, you've got enough juice in your phone and you've got a backup battery because, you can't always guarantee that you're going to have a power source when you're there. Or maybe you're going to bring a separate camera plus that battery or that charger, the memory card, making sure you have enough space on that stuff, plus that backup battery, backup memory card, cords, all that stuff. Or maybe you're going to take an audio recording device, plus the batteries and the cords, or those oral history interview kits that I showed you earlier from the library. Maybe if you plan to scan a lot of stuff, you want to bring a portable scanner, plus the cords and the charger, or maybe you're going to use that phone or make hard copies of stuff. There's a couple scanner options. A lot of genealogists use what's called the Flip Pal mobile scanner. It's no longer manufactured, but you can find some still for sale online, used. They also have these wand scanners that are kind of just, the length of a piece of paper basically, and you just kind of roll it over the piece of paper. I had one for a while. In my opinion, it's a waste of money. I don't think it worked very well. I thought using my phone or using a tablet to take a picture of it was way easier than using that wand scanner, and it takes up a lot less room because I'm always going to have my phone with me. Thankfully, a lot of libraries and other places like that have scanning capabilities. So, like for example, our copy machines here at the library, we can do scanning on. So, a lot of places have those in their copy machines where you can just take a scan of that page and email it to yourself instead of printing that hard copy. You might need some loose change or some cash in various denominations for parking or the vending machine or whatever else, or copies, things like that. Photo ID, a lot of places ask you, especially when you're going to research there, to fill out a research form and they want to see your ID. Because if you damage something of theirs, they want to know who's damaging that stuff, or they're making sure, you're coming to access the stuff and you are who you say you are. Maybe you want to bring that paper copy of your family tree again so you can make sure that you're looking at the right people, especially if there's a lot of John Smiths. You want to make sure you're looking at the right John Smith for the right generation. Or have that digital copy of a family tree. There's apps now that you can have on your smartphone that you can pull those up. Make sure you have that username and password handy, but now I can pull up my ancestry tree on my phone real quick if I need to instead of having that paper copy. If I'm going to go outdoors, research in the cemetery, I want to have insect repellent or sunblock, or if it's going to be cold weather, I want to make sure I have a jacket and mittens and stuff like that. If you're going to be saving a lot of stuff, maybe you want to have a USB drive or an external hard drive, but make sure that's not the only place you're going to save it to. I always save it to at least two different spots just in case there's any kind of technical malfunction with that stuff, that I didn't just go all the way to Salt Lake City and save it on one thing and then all of a sudden that thing got broke or didn't work. Now I've got a backup that it's in my Google Drive, for example. I like to bring a magnifying glass too. I don't wear glasses yet, thankfully, but sometimes that print is just really hard to read, even if you do have glasses, that you can look at that magnifying glass and get the print to be a little bit bigger, or especially if you're reading handwriting, it's sometimes a lot easier to magnify it to, really make out all those letters. Some people like to bring blank copies of research forms like their pedigree chart, family group sheets. I've got a record transcription form that I use for birth records, death records, marriage records, things like that. I'll show you an example of one in just a second. So when I know I'm going to go to a courthouse and transcribe a bunch of birth records, I'm making sure I've got those so I can just fill in the blanks basically on my forms. If you're going international, you got to have an outlet adapter or, things for translation to help you navigate around there. Maybe, if you're somebody who is going to be there for a long time, make sure you have some snacks available. You might not always have the ability to eat it there while you're in the repository, but maybe it's something as you're walking from one place to another or driving from one place to another, you can get a quick snack so that you don't have to kind of stop your research roll. I also, if you get those free address labels or you have a label maker, I always stick those on things like my folders, my USB drive, my external hard drive, anything that I'm bringing with me, because if I accidentally leave it at that place that I was researching at, now they have a way to contact me to get it back. Or if I call them and I say, okay, it's got my name on it, now they know exactly who it belongs to. And it's just a nice way to use all those free address labels too. So here's an example of what I use for death records. So like I said, if I know I'm going to go to a courthouse or somewhere where I'm going to be looking at a lot of death records and I'm not making copies of those death records because they cost money, I'm going to use this and now I can just fill in all the blanks, fill in that record number, volume, name, date of death, date of birth, etc., etc. So for each person, I'm using this form and then I usually can print two or three of these per page. So then I'm just going person by person, filling that out and then not having to keep on rewriting the same things like father's first name and father's last name and birthplace. Now I can just fill in the blanks and it goes a lot faster. There's also something called the Ultimate Records Checklist from Family History Daily. I've got this link for you in your handout. So I recommend downloading it to make sure you're kind of researching all the different possible records for an ancestor so you can see it kind of breaks it down. So here's the different types of birth records or marriage records or death records or newspaper records that you might be able to find. And it goes on for a few pages that, hey, I've got to make sure I found that death notice or that engagement announcement or the graduation thing. And it also gives you idea for potential resources you can explore when you're searching online or when you're looking at what repositories might have offline. So when you're searching in that card catalog for the library or the museum that you're going to, you can see, do they have newspapers? Do they have death records? Do they have family Bible collection or anything like that before you go there? I also recommend, especially if you're going to go somewhere quite often, creating a research repository guide that as you plan your visit or as you continue to go to this place, that you're updating it with kind of helpful hints or things that you want to remember. Or other genealogists, maybe they have created these that they'd be happy to share with you. I know a lot of people on Facebook sometimes share these back and forth. But basically, it's just creating this guide like, okay, what's the name of the place I'm going to? What's that website? The location and directions? What are their hours? Who can I contact or who did I talk to there? Does it cost for photocopies? Where's the place to park that's nearest? Where's the nearest place to eat? Any research restrictions or policies or anything that I want to know before I go there in advance to remind myself, okay, it's been like 3 years since I've been to the Wisconsin Historical Society. Let me pull out the repository guide, skim it quick, and now I don't have to waste my time re-looking all that information up again or try to get in my brain and remind myself, okay, where's that place I parked again? Now I've got it in my repository guide. So, for example, I created this repository guide on the Wisconsin Historical Society Library where I've got all this various information and all this stuff is right here that now, if it's been 3 years since I've been there, now I can go through, read through, okay, here's the research restrictions. Okay, I've got to fill out that card at the desk. That's right. I've got to wait for them to retrieve the pamphlet stuff, for example. Or, oh, some things might be at the area research center. So there's different little helpful notes I've made for myself for this specific place because I know I'm going to go there several times. Again, before you go, always check, double check, make sure all your devices are charged up, make sure they're ready to go, make sure you have enough room on your camera, that, after taking 20 photos, all of a sudden you're out of memory. Well, now you need to sit there at the repository and delete photos or figure out a backup way. So make sure that's all done before you leave the house or before you leave your hotel. Again, you might always be guaranteed a power source, so I always like to have like a backup battery pack. Make sure that's charged too, because if I'm going to be there all day, I want to make sure I'm going to have power all day. You also want to write down or take photos of the different materials that you're using and where you got them for your source citations, if you're allowed to take photos. If you're not, of course, you just want to write yourself a note, of course. Um, I don't want you to spend a ton of time looking through and reading through all the stuff that you're looking at. So if you find that birth record, don't spend, 10 minutes reading through and, oh, all the little details on it. Save that for when that place is closed and you're back at the hotel or back at home. or over your lunch break while you're sitting and eating lunch and having a little break. You don't want to waste that time reviewing all this stuff. You want to take the time to pull that stuff that you came to pull there for. So, making sure you're getting those 10 death records before you are sitting and reading through all the death records to see all those little pieces of detail that you wanted. I always make sure to check any of the photos I've taken before I leave or before I go on to the next photo. You know, if I'm taking a photo of a book page, I want to make sure it's not blurry, that I can actually read it and, pull it up again by the time I get back home. I don't want to find out, oh, after I got back home, that 10 of the 120 photos I took are blurry and I can't read them. I want to make sure before I leave that the photos came out clear and that I've got everything I need. Of course, you got to make sure though that you can take photos. So some places don't allow that. And you got to make sure that you're adhering to copyright. So for example, you can't take a photo or a scan of a whole entire book. That's a violation of copyright. So even if it's this really cool genealogy book all about your ancestors, you can't make a copy of every single page. That's called a violation of copyright. A couple photo tips for you. So I always take a photo of the front of the book or a title page where it lists that title, that author, publisher, that kind of stuff. I take a photo of the copyright page, so kind of the page on the back of that title page that tells me when it was published, where it was published, stuff like that. I take a full page of that record or that page that I want a photo of, making sure that that page number that's in the corner is visible or the page number at the bottom is visible. And then I take a little zoomed in section of that specific part that I want a photo of, or say just that one page is all about my ancestor, or I take little zoomed in photos of each little section, just in case it's hard to read. Then I can really zoom in on those specific parts a little bit more to see if I can read it a little easier. Again, you need to make sure you're going to cite your sources. So don't forget to have that cover of that book or the copyright page or the volume and page number that you got it from, or the box number at the archives or whatever information you need to cite those sources. You can also ask if you can take a video or audio recording, especially like if you're at the cemetery or you're talking with cousins and hearing their stories. You know, maybe you can take a video of you walking around the cemetery section so you can see all the different headstones and see all the different names. And next time maybe you go visit, now you know exactly where to go again, or maybe you don't have time to take photos of all these different gravestones all around your ancestor, but now you can at least in the video see all the different names that there are. And then later on in your research, a year from now, you realize who, the person three tombstones down is related to you somehow. And now you've got at least that little video showing their tombstone and where they are in relation to your ancestor. Again, always double check that you're leaving with everything you came with. Make sure you're leaving with anything you paid for, anything you printed. Make sure you put away all the things that you used. Certain repositories do have some rules, so some places might ask you to put anything that you used on a cart and not reshelve them yourself to make sure that they are reshelving them appropriately and in the right spot. They, just have carts there that you can put those materials on. Be sure to thank the staff if anybody has helped you, especially. I can speak from personal experience. We're often overworked and underpaid. So a small thank you goes a long way. If we've helped you, in any little part do your genealogy or, lead you to those resources that you're really looking for, or just, hey, thanks for providing this service of having these vital records here. We really appreciate that we have access to it because without these staff and these people taking care of this stuff, we wouldn't have access to it or it would be in very bad shape. Just quickly, I want to talk a little bit specifically about planning a trip to the cemetery as well. So you could make a little cemetery travel kit if you'd like, or if you plan to do some extensive time at a cemetery. So again, you want to make sure to have that camera with batteries, backup batteries, or your fully charged phone, making sure you've got storage room on your phone for those photos that you plan to take. Bring a spray bottle with water or D2. So there's something called D2. It's a biological solution. This is the only kind of approved cleaning solution that the like major cemeteries, like Arlington National Cemetery, uses this, or a lot of the national cemeteries recommend using this to like clean the monuments. So this shows you an example of, what it looked like before and what it looked like after using D2. So these are the only things that I personally and the people who take care of cemeteries personally recommend. You can purchase it online. Some cemeteries also sell it. Like I know locally, Riverside Cemetery does sell it as well. Those water and D2 are the only things you should ever spray on a tombstone. I know at some point some people have said like, oh, you can put shaving cream on it and use that to clean, or oh, put some bleach on it. Those are all really, really bad, terrible things to do. You're going to ruin those stones. D2 and water are the only things you need. Maybe you want some scissors or some garden shears if there's some grass or things around that grave. You can trim that stuff down to make sure you can read all the information, especially on the bottom if that stone's sinking a little bit, or making sure that you're getting a clear photo without, grass in the way, things like that. If you got bad knees like me, maybe you want a kneeling pad or a gardening pad if you're going to be down on your knees cleaning that tombstone or trimming it or just getting down lower to take a better photo. In certain instances, you might want to bring a mirror to reflect light to get a better image of that tombstone. Or you can bring a notebook, pencil, pen to write down what that stone says, especially if the stone's hard to read or your photos aren't super clear. Some people also bring whiteboard and a marker and write that information down and then take a photo next to the tombstone with it transcribed. Or there are certain places where your ancestor might not have a marker, but this spot right here is where they are buried, even if they don't have a marker. Then you can write down on the whiteboard the name of that person and that this is their resting spot. If you're going in spring, summer, fall, bring sunscreen, bug spray, all that kind of fun stuff. Gloves and hand warmers if you're going in that colder weather, especially. Wet wipes, I always bring those for my hands because especially if you've cleaned stuff with D2 or you've been poking around in the grass and dirt and stuff, your hands get all gross and stuff. So I like to have a wet wipe for my hands so that they're not feeling gross. So if you have a tombstone that's really hard to read, what you can do is use that spray bottle with that water and just spray it on that tombstone because it's going to darken the stone and make those faded letters a little bit easier to read. Again, don't use anything other than water or D2 on that tombstone. I always also recommend trying to take photos with and without the flash on the camera. Sometimes they turn out better one way or the other. There's also a way that you can use the sunlight and a mirror to redirect light onto a stone, especially for those that are really hard to read or really worn. So what you do is you angle the mirror to reflect the sunlight that's coming, and it kind of highlights the lettering that's on the stone and makes it a little easier to read. So you just kind of have to like find the right angle and try the mirror in a couple different spots as you're taking your photos. So I do it like from the sides or from the back of the stone and see how each of them turn out. Of course, if you're traveling from a far distance and you don't have a mirror with you or a large enough mirror, aluminum foil also makes a good alternative. So you can just, get it cheap at the dollar store, wrap it around a piece of cardboard, and then kind of use that to angle it so that the light bounces off that aluminum foil onto the front of the stone. So fun little tip for you. I also take a lot of photos at the cemeteries of the cemetery entrance sign, a whole overview of that plot area where that family is buried, a close-up of the whole stone, a close-up of sections of that stone. So if they've got, a spot where their birth date is, I take a little close-up of that. A spot where their death date is, I take a close-up of that. If there's anything on the bottom or any symbols, I take really close-up photos of each of those as well. And then I take photos of all the different plots or tombstones around my ancestors, because again, you never know when you might find a connection to that person later on in your research. I also make sure to take my photos at eye level rather than like standing down and looking down. So that's where your kneeling pad comes in handy, or you bring a younger assistant with you who can get down lower eye level with that tombstone and take a better photo. Again, take those photos from multiple angles. Check your photos, make sure that they're not blurry, that they turned out as best as you can. Especially if it's a really sunny day, you might need to go pop into the shade for a little bit or pop back into the car to make sure that those photos turned out right and that it's easier to read if the sun's not shining super bright on you. The best time of the year to go to a cemetery is going to be the springtime, especially if you're in an area that has snow. So after that snow is gone, but before all the weeds come and become overgrown, and before it gets too super hot out. So that's why springtime is great. It does get sometimes rainy though in springtime, or could get muddy. But it's really great if you can choose a day that's slightly overcast. So today we've got quite a bit of cloud cover. So it's always nice for going to the cemetery that, the bright sun isn't directly on you for temperature and for the photos. So if the sun's not directly overhead, especially during midday, you can then have your photos turn out a lot better than if it's, completely sunny, shining right at that tombstone. Again, don't forget to search around that area where your ancestors buried. You might see other relatives, other neighbors, other friends who might be buried nearby. And if you have time, just take a walk around the whole cemetery. If it's a smaller cemetery, take photos of those surnames that are standing out to you that you've already been researching, even if you haven't found a connection yet, because maybe in a couple months from now, you're going to find that connection. Of course, make sure you're dressing appropriately for the weather and for the bugs. Wear comfortable shoes, boots, check for ticks or other fun little bugs before you get in the car. You might be in an area that has snakes or other critters that you need to watch out for. Also be aware there's sometimes sunken graves. So you want to make sure you're walking carefully, walking slowly, paying attention to where you're walking so you don't trip and hurt yourself on a stone that you didn't see or that's kind of like flush with the ground. Sometimes you can't always see those. All right, so now this is what you need to do after your research trip. So, while all the things are fresh in your mind after you've gotten back to your hotel or gotten back home, you're going to review everything that you did on your trip. So this is kind of the great time that you put some analysis time into, or at the end of every day, if you're having a multi-day trip, maybe at the end of every day, you're kind of, well, it's fresh in your mind, maybe making notes for yourself or reviewing things. Because then, especially if you're doing a multiple day trip, maybe you're going to find, oh, the name of my fourth great grandparents that now I have on that record. Now I know that they're also buried in the same cemetery that I plan to visit the next day instead of like once I got home, I found that out and now I don't have that information. Or, oh, now I need to go back to that state or that city and go back to that cemetery. So I always make sure to make research notes that might be helpful to me or make notes about the place that I visited. So again, like if next time I plan to go to the Wisconsin Historical Society, now I need to remind myself, oh, you need to have money on that WIS card in order to make copies, things like that. So if you created that in your planning stages, this is also a time when you can add those notes again or add new notes. You also want to process all your stuff that you found. So you add the little facts and things that you found to your family tree. Create citations for everything that you found. If you're somebody who likes to scan in your documents and keep an electronic copy of those, do that. Make any research notes. Update your research log or your to-do list. If you've found those 10 obituaries that you're looking for, now you can take them off your to research list. If you met with any family, type up some notes of your conversation or making sure that you're saving that audio or that video recording in a couple different spots again. Filing all your documents, if you're somebody who keeps those paper copies, making sure that you're putting them in the appropriate folders, or if you've got those digital copies, putting them in their right folders, making sure you're backing that stuff up. We're going to talk all about organizing your stuff, backing up your stuff a lot more in September. So if you're somebody who hasn't thought about that, 3-2-1 is my solution. 3 copies, 2 different places, one off-site or offline. Or so like what I will do is I'll have like a physical copy or have 3 digital copies. I'll have one on my computer, one on an external hard drive, and then one in my Google Drive, for example. Those are three different copies, two different places. So like one is a hard copy, one's a digital copy, and then one of those things is off-site. So if my house burns down, I've got my Google Drive stuff that's not going to ever burn down because it's a cloud-based storage system. If you can't go on a research trip, of course, not everybody can. Make sure you're trying to exhaust all the possible online things you can. So remember back in January or earlier this year, we talked all about different online repositories like the Digital Public Library of America, HathiTrust, Google Books, Internet Archive, the different library and archive websites, lots more. We've got that recorded on YouTube. If you didn't get a chance to attend it live, you can feel free to go to our YouTube channel and catch the recording or refresh your brain on it. You can also always try to contact that place that you want to go to and can't go to and see if they can provide the information, perhaps for a fee, without you having to go there. Or maybe there's some volunteer or a paid researcher that you can hire who would be able to go get that stuff for you. So there's quite a lot of genealogy Facebook groups where you can ask for help or find a researcher, either for free or for paid. Some people, offer free services like, hey, I'm going to go to the Family Search Library on this date. Does anybody have any quick things that I can look up and send you? Some people do that. Or like I've gone to like the WAPACA Register of Deeds and it's like, oh, I only have like 10 things to look up. I want to make it worth my trip. Let me post on the Wisconsin Genealogy Facebook group, see if anybody else happens to need a record from WAPACA that I can quick look up for them and send it off to them. Make sure to connect with other family that are researching that same branch of your tree because maybe they have gone to that place that you want to go to, or they're planning a trip there soon and could look up a few additional things for you, or would share what they were able to find at that place that they went to research. So, pulling on that family network of yours that they're doing genealogy research in that same branch of the tree, they can help share information with you. That's what I've got for you. Next month, we've got two different sessions all about photos. So, our first one is going to be on July 14th. It's going to be all about locating, identifying, and dating photos. Then on the 28th, we're going to talk about scanning, organizing, and preserving photos. In the meantime, we've got our Find Your Ancestors session on Thursday, July 9th at 6 p.m., all about migration methods of the United States. So, how your ancestors got from Ellis Island to Wisconsin, or to Missouri, or to Washington State, or however they moved all around the United States. We're going to talk all about the different migration methods and how they would have traveled around the United States. That one is going to be an in-person only in the library upstairs in our community meeting room. So, hopefully, you're able to join us for that if you live locally. That's what I've got for you. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions and hopefully you're all set to go on a research trip somewhere fun.
I think the most complicated for me has been organizing the information that I find.
Yes.
Trying to remember, okay, so for this ancestor, I have this information. For this
Yeah.
ancestor, I have this. Keeping sides, do I start with my dad's parent and then their parent? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Some people have like a checklist for each person. Like that you're making sure that you're hitting all those documents for each person. You could have lists on lists on lists. I mean, yeah, it's hard to kind of keep it all organized, keep track of it all. Or if you have like multiple people with the same names, like I've got Jacobs on both branches, both sides of the family. So I'm like, okay, is that this Jacob or the other Jacob? Like I'm trying to remind my brain. Yes. Yeah. Yep. You have multiple generations with the same name, and you got to figure out, is it this John or that John? Which generation am I looking at? So they don't make it easy, but it is fun, right?
You just 2 days weekend.
Yeah.
And it connected everything for me all the way back to the 1700s. Like, oh, that was
But keep in mind, we don't know how accurate that is because anybody can add or edit or change anything on the family search family tree. So you gotta still do the legwork of verifying all the things that you find.
which means
So there are going to be e-resources, of course, on Family Search, on other genealogy resources that they might have linked to that family tree. And then there's going to be offsite stuff too that people, some people just do genealogy research online because maybe that's all they're able to do or all they want to do. But there's so much more that you can find offsite that, you can find conflicting information or, better information or pieces of the puzzle that you can't find online.
So.
Hmm.
That's Outagamie County yet. So the courthouse would have.
Yep.
Where do you?
Land records. So if you're looking where they lived, that's going to be land records to the Register of Deeds office. Mhm. Yeah. Any questions from you guys?
Have you ever gone on the trip for cemeteries? You checked into them ahead of time,
Hmm.
you called them,
Yep.
looked at their websites, and then you get there, it's in a really bad neighborhood. Or you get there and it's not in the condition like the website showed. And like sometimes they can't even narrow it down for you. Like they just say, oh, it's in
Yeah.
Lyle.
Yeah, sometimes unfortunately they aren't the best record keepers, or sometimes reach out to them and they don't get back to you.
That's my,
Or they
Uh,
get back to you, but they
yes. Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
I never thought that. Neighborhood is.
So that's, yeah, you can always look at Google Maps and explore the area beforehand, especially if it's somewhere where you're not familiar with. Bring a friend with you for safety, if it's that bad of a place. And sometimes, like some places don't have cemetery maps. They can't tell you. Like I made my brother go to Shiocton one day with me, and we walked all around a cemetery in Shiocton until we found them. And it's like a little treasure hunt until you find them because they had no cemetery map or they didn't get back to me. And if you want that information bad enough and you've got the time to spend there,
have you tried to use like, I contacted the Catholic Church
mhm.
to see if I could get, better records and learn getting out of cemeteries. And they on their website said that you cannot do genealogy research with their records unless it's for sacramental purposes.
Okay.
And so I haven't found any way around that. And
I have not heard of that. Have you reached out to the diocese? Because you can do
that's
genealogy
what-
research at the diocese.
It's right on that they not provide records unless the research you're doing is for sacramental.
Maybe they have changed that then since I've been there. I haven't been there for a few years to the Green Bay diocese at least, but I was able, yeah. Yeah.
Green Bay.
Yeah. And I also, I think I've actually talked to one person about records, that were for, this is going back some time. So a specific church that was no longer in existence now.
Mhm.
And they said, well, the records wouldn't come to them, it wouldn't come to diocese, it would come to the nearest located Catholic church. At the time.
Yeah.
That, and so it really.
Sometimes, yeah. Mhm.
Get through that.
Every place is different.
Yeah, every
Like,
place is
you
different.
let you-
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to send in
Yes.
information, hope you get a hit, and pay $20 for each guest.
Yes.
So, but Green Bay is great. I was
Yeah.
just there last week.
Sometimes it depends on who you get. Sometimes you might get somebody not, helpful or not knowledgeable, and then the next time you call, you get somebody who's just like amazing and will tell you all the things that you need to know. So I would say persistent sometimes. Just keep trying, or see like Facebook. Like ask anybody in a Michigan genealogy group. Has anybody had experience trying to get records from the diocese? Because I've never done any through the diocese through Michigan, so I'm not sure if they're different from the Wisconsin ones, but I've been able to research at the Wisconsin ones. So
Gee,
yeah, so like on Facebook, they've got different genealogy groups for each state. Some of them are a little bit more active than others. There's also like worldwide ones, like the Random Acts of Genealogical Kindness is another big one. Genealogy Squad is another really big one that's worldwide or US wide that you can pose those questions and people can chime in if they've had experiences or have any tips and tricks for you if they've worked with those places as well.
is there a specific site to like hire a genealogy researcher?
So I always recommend hiring one that is a professional. So there is called the Association of Professional Genealogists.
And is that US or is that?
This is worldwide. So there's a spot, find a genealogist. So you can search in their directory. You can, family history research, and there's specific criteria, like if you're looking for, specific things, or a specific country, specific state, anything like that, and it will show you the results then.
Do you have a favorite site for finding?
Mhm.
Try to find which, or when your relatives, is there a source?
So I always kind of use the big Ancestry and Family Search are pretty much the main two that I start with. Sometimes Heritage Quest has some records, sometimes MyHeritage has some records. It really depends on what you're looking for. We did do a whole immigration and naturalization talk last fall. If you want to look at our YouTube channel, we've got more information showing those sites and how to use those sites on those specific topics.
What is the YouTube channel?
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/APLREF. So we've got a whole genealogy jumpstart playlist right here. So you can see all of our videos going all the way back to last year when we started. So we've got everything: birth records, marriage, divorce, cemetery, family search, family tree online, ancestry library edition, newspapers, more about family search, census records, immigration, naturalization, city and other directories, religious records, finding your family in online repositories, court records, probate, land, and then last month we did 2 different military ones. That's what we've done to date.
What is it?
This is youtube.com/RPL APLREF. APLREF, yes. Or you can just probably Google Appleton Public Library YouTube and it will pop up. Or go to youtube.com, type in Appleton Public Library and it'll pop up.
Katie, you said you use Catholic Church records, so I went last week to Green Bay Diocese. That was the first time, and I was very excited. I had great expectations. And I looked up several parishes. I found family.
Yeah.
But I was really disappointed. I mean, like, I expected on a baptism record to see like full names.
Yeah.
And I guess it just depends on who records. The same
Yes.
thing with weddings. I
Yeah.
expected to see like full names of the parents. And sometimes it was just, Frank or Mary or Minnie.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the maiden name of the
Yeah.
parents,
Sometimes
things like
those
that.
record keepers just weren't thinking of us in the future that
Yeah.
we'd want to know that
Baptisms,
information.
At least.
Yeah.
Have the first and middle name. Of
Yeah.
the
I
child.
mean, I've gotten some that have them and some that don't. It all depends on who the record keeper is. Even if you're looking at records from the same church over the time span of like 50 years, you can get, differing information depending on who's filling it out. Yeah, and that's just the luck of the draw, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, like you said.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
expected it.
Yes.
Normal, yes.
Yeah.
And, you expect the person as big.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Full names of the sponsors, things like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, so I was like,
Well, you just got a person who is not a great record keeper, I guess.
yeah, I saw this.
Yeah,
So that's why. I
very
thought-
strange. Yeah.
If I hadn't known names, it would have been helpful.
Yeah.
But these were people I knew about. I was hoping to find like middle names.
Yeah.
And it just really, was
Yeah,
surprising.
I've got one certified copy, I'm trying to get. I've got one certified copy of a death record for my great grandfather in the United States, in Wisconsin. And the person who is giving the information is, I think, a daughter.
Mhm.
But she gives correct information for his like birth and death, and and his parents' names. But then she gets to his grandparents and she gives a last name, like Coat, okay, but says that person came from Scott. But when I go on the family tree on Ancestry, family ancestry, I can find Coat, but they're from France, which they should be from France.
Yeah.
Because that's where this whole family came from. So I don't know, I don't know where this Scotland comes from. And you'd think she would be knowledgeable enough,
Yeah.
but
But again, sometimes, memories aren't always as great as we like them to be, or maybe they asked it in a weird way that she was confused and said something else. You just never know, unfortunately. That's why we always try to find multiple records for each source. Because you're gonna unfortunately get conflicting information sometimes. So you just have to evaluate all the different records that you have and see what makes the most sense. Obviously, if you can find them in France and you've got records of them in France, that's, pretty definitive proof. Yeah, unfortunately,
I don't know that, but I've got
yeah.
this very detailed tree.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that maybe I had the wrong person. And
Yeah,
this
there could
tree
be
would
people
go-
with the same name.
The names, the last name of the ancestors were the last names of the tree.
Hmm.
And so what's the chance that you'd have a Colt and a Susie, but one of them was in Scotland when the tree says exactly where they lived in Quebec.
Yeah.
That it's, but the death record is the certain.
Yeah. Well, even on a death record, though, it could have incorrect information, unfortunately, depending on who's filling it out.
I went to a cemetery in Erie and my cousin showed me around to where her parents' graves were and some other relatives. And when I'd been there before with my uncle, he'd said, oh, there's some others down there, but they aren't important. And so when I was on my own walking through the cemetery, I found this huge kind of monument with the last name on it. And so I went around and took pictures. There were 19 different graves around there. I don't know yet if they're connected or not, but I have a feeling they just said, well, they aren't a direct line, so they aren't important.
Yeah. They could still be related. Maybe they're just related really far back and you didn't realize that. Yeah. Yeah. There's all kinds of fun things that you can find and all kinds of frustrating things that you can also find when you're trying to track down those ancestors. See if they've got any other questions here. Someone says the Wisconsin Historical Society has a great video series that discusses cemetery cleaning and restoration as well. Someone says they've used Find a Grave gravestone pictures to help read stones that have deteriorated over the years. Yeah, especially if they took those photos way, way, long ago and now the stone is deteriorated. There's also I know especially like in the 1970s, especially in this area, like a lot of the genealogy societies or historical societies would go around the cemeteries and do transcriptions of the stones. And from 1970 compared to today, a lot of time's passed that those stones might be so worn now that you can't read them, but in those transcriptions, they might, have been readable at that time.
So that cleaner you mentioned, Katie, does that work on flat stones or is it?
It works on any
vertical
stone.
Slanted stone.
It works on any stone. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of the really bad ones you might have to clean multiple times or do multiple passes. I've got a little brochure on the corner here from the DAR. We did a cemetery cleaning demonstration with them last year, and they provided us with that brochure and showed us all about how to use D2 and how to clean with that. I was hoping to do it again this year, but we just haven't been able to find a date that works out. But maybe this fall we can possibly do one, but they have shown like the different tools. They even have little cleaning kits that they sell for, I think it's $30 or $35 that have a little bit of D2, have some of the brushes and things that they can,
They've
use
got
on them.
jugs of water, not just a
Yes.
spray bottle. They've
Yeah.
got jugs of.
Especially if you're doing an extensive cleaning. Yes.
But
Yes. Even written in stone, things can be inaccurate, unfortunately.
And, and again, on the family tree, I can trace my great grandmother to a specific place where she was born in Quebec, a specific date, you know, but yet her gravestone, well, first of all, the cemetery moved,
Hmm.
and they were supposed to move all the bodies and all the stones. There is, on her stone, there are just the two, the years. Just
Yes.
the birth year and the death year, but the
Mhm.
birth year, I think is off by 5 years.
Yeah.
And, and again, I emailed to the cemetery, but I didn't even get a response,
Yeah.
so I don't know what kind of records they keep, or
Yeah.
if they had any records.
Or maybe the guy who was carving the stone messed up, or maybe she, shaved off a couple years from her age because she wanted to appear younger. I mean, there's so many different
Stones were moved
variables.
from cemetery to another cemetery
Yeah.
when they closed the cemetery. And she was kind of long gone at that point.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking that maybe her stone got damaged or something.
And they
and
did a
the family
replacement.
members just
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah, you
identified
just never know,
it.
unfortunately. Yeah. That's why, again, we use multiple sources for each fact. If you've got, sources that definitively point to her birth date and birth year as being a specific one, like a birth record.
See, I don't have that. I got
Yeah.
the other two. There's-
Yeah.
So the birth record is gonna be March.
Yeah. Yes. But once you get that, that'll tell you the year. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's possible, records and resources available that you could use to prove or disprove that year.
We had a cemetery service for my aunt who died in December, and she had already had her plot, her stone there, and so they just had the monument company come in and engrave the death date.
Mhm.
And they had them clean all of the stones of the family.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there are services that do cleaning as well. If you don't live locally or you don't want to damage it at all, there are people who do that. Yeah. All right, let's see if there's any questions here online. Where did you find your record transcription form? I created those. So I just created them in Excel and I said, hey, after many, many times of going to a courthouse and having to repeat the same things, I said, I'm going to just create a form of all the things I plan to have on that record. And then I just fill in the blanks. So some people do have them online if you just, search death record transcription form and see if there's one that you find that you like. Repeat the reason I may want to take some blank birth record templates or death record templates. Um, the cost of obtaining a record, yes. So like in Wisconsin, for example, if I purchase each death record or each birth record, $20 a record. But I can look those records up for free and then transcribe them on my blank form. So instead of spending hundreds of dollars on these death records and birth records and marriage records, I'm just transcribing what I'm seeing on the record, and that's my copy of the record. And I do purchase the official records for, my direct line ancestors that I want to make sure to keep. But for other records like aunts and uncles and the more distant related branches, I just do a transcription. Can one typically read headstones in Wisconsin from 120 years ago? There's so many factors, depending on what type of material that stone was made out of. It could still be readable. Uh, is it in direct sunlight or did somebody try to clean it with something that they weren't supposed to clean it with? I mean, there's a ton of factors. I can't tell you one way or another. Each stone is going to be different. So you're going to have to just go to the cemetery and get a photo of it or see if you can find a volunteer on the Find a Grave website or on any of the other genealogy websites to go try to take a photo of it for you. think those were all the questions that I've got for you. Any other questions remaining from you guys? All right. Well, we'll see you in July then again for our photos one-on-one 101. So July 14th and July 28th, we've got those sessions. So thanks for joining us and good luck planning your research trips, everyone. Take care.